Every year, 42.5 million people in the U.S. suffer from mental illness.
Suicide is the third leading cause of death for people ages 10 to 24.
There are more than 200 classified types of mental illness.
18.2% of the United States alone suffers from mental illness. Only 55% of American adults with a mental health condition receive medical help.
An estimated 15% of homeless people live with serious and untreated mental illness.
Did you know that attempts to treat mental illness date back to as early as 5000 BCE?
One terrible thing they did to people with mental illness is a procedure called trephining.
This procedure first took place in Neolithic times. During this procedure, a hole or treffing was chipped into their skulls using crude stone instruments. In the 1700s, mental institutions were commonly used.
Many victims of mental illness were locked away in these vile facilities, usually by their families, and often stayed there until they died.
Inmates of the institutions were horribly abused. They would often be crammed into small dark cells with other inmates and almost never let out.
In the 1700s, the mentally ill were not seen as victims of a terrible disease, but as criminals who purposely caused their condition by performing satanic rituals, and many were burned at the stake.
This perception started to change in the early 1900s when psychiatry became more accepted.
Today, those who suffer from mental illness are only hospitalized if it is absolutely necessary, but the subject of mental illness still remains very controversial. One major contributing factor as to why it remains controversial is the way mental illness is portrayed on social media. In social media, mentally ill people are often categorized as dangerous, which can cause people who think they might be mentally ill to not seek treatment in fear that they themselves will be feared. However, social media can also be a place of refuge for the mentally ill. By giving sufferers a chance to talk about their feelings and experiences, it could make it easier for someone without mental illness to understand the ordeal, and it would give sufferers a chance to express themselves anonymously.
Mental illness always needs to be treated. I have two friends who suffer from some types of mental illness, and both of them are being treated by, or with, I should say, medication, doctors, and therapy, and both of them are living in mainstream society.
How do you view mental illness?
Mental illness is an illness. It's nothing to be afraid of. It should just be viewed as an illness. And then how do we cure it? How do we make it better?
While most causes of mental illness are unknown, some occurrences have been linked to the start of a mental illness, including biological, such as inheriting a mental illness from a family member, brain damage, damages while in the womb, poor nutrition, and exposure to toxins.
Psychological, such as experiencing child abuse, witnessing death, having a dysfunctional family life, experiencing neglect, or other traumas.
In addition, addiction to substances such as drugs, tobacco, or alcohol can cause additional cases of mental illness.
Hello, sir. Would you like to donate?
Heck no! I know you little charities drive America further into death a mile a minute.
But we're helping an issue that needs help badly.
Yeah, right. Everyone knows the mentally ill are just crazy, drug-addicted murderers.
Well, it's true that some people who are mentally ill do commit murder. But a good percentage of mentally ill don't do that sort of stuff. Even if they did, they're too confused at the moment to realize what they're actually doing.
Exactly! That's why they should all be locked up. Every last one of them.
And by the way, addiction is a mental illness. It would make sense to do that because most of the mentally ill are not disturbed to that point, in fact. The majority of violent crimes and murders committed are by non-mentally ill people.
Well, if most people aren't disturbed to that point, then why do you need all this money?
Just because you're disturbed so much that you don't realize that you're killing somebody doesn't mean you don't need the support and help. There are millions of people who don't get help for mental illnesses because they're too afraid because of what it's said on social media and other places like that. It's misunderstood in general, and they're afraid of how people react. So because of that, we need to make sure that there's good mental health care available for those who seek it.
Well, if most people aren't disturbed enough to the point where they could hurt someone, and a ton of people are even too afraid to get treatment, then why do you need all this money?
Sir, do you know how much money the U.S. loses from people being too mentally ill to work? Over $190 billion.
Well, I guess that might help America's budget.
So, are you going to donate?
Nope, I'm broke.
A few things that the president and government can do to help mental illness are things providing fundings for research centers to find cures, causes and different forms of treatment for mental illness.
Providing funding for organizations that help educate new parents in ways to benefit their children or families. Also encouraging and yes, providing funding for organizations that help discourage drug.
Other ways the president and government should help the situations with the mentally ill are things like to provide mental health coverages the same way they do physical health coverages.
Educate the Veterans Administration on mental illness, especially post-traumatic stress disorder, PTSD, and self-harm intervention. Too many veterans return from duty damaged and in pain, both mental and physical. Owe it to them. They deserve our help, not our disregard. To anyone who is suffering.
Especially if their mental illness can be treated.
Also, for people who don't have insurance or their insurance won't cover it, this sadly can lead to homelessness. Also, mental health care must also be available in homeless shelters as well.
School counselors should always be available.
It would show them that mental illness is a disease and not a weakness, and certainly not a choice for the mentally ill. Also, the president and government officials must be educated themselves on mental illness too. This will make more people less afraid to be open and seek treatment about their mental illness. Mental illness is obviously a huge problem. It is most likely the reason behind about 90% of suicides and is costing the U.S. about $250 billion every year. And of course is causing massive amounts of unnecessary suffering.
But the citizens cannot do that by just signing petitions in the grocery stores. We need the help and support of the people who it is to support us, and we demand that we get it.
We demand that organizations that support mental illness get funding and continue to receive it. And we demand that mental health care be available for anyone at any time. And most of all, we demand that the president and government educate themselves on mental illness and not be ignorant about this very real issue.